Hello and welcome back to my channel and to my Fighting Fantasy Gamebook retrospective. And now we've hit book 6, Deathtrap Dungeon. What a fantastic name that is, Deathtrap Dungeon. Now, when this book came out, I thought it was okay, right? But later on, when I found out about Fighting Fantasy fandom and I started reading other people's opinions, I realised that most people thought that this book was the best one. I was amazed by this. I never thought it was that great, and I was surprised that so many people loved it. I think one guy told me that it was the basis, he was a dungeon master, he used to play these games with his friends, and that this was the basis of most of his dungeons. That's how much he liked the book. I was surprised by this. I never thought it was that great. I liked it, but I never thought it was so great. And reading it this time round for this retrospective, I felt kind of exactly the same way. I think what I didn't like about this when I was a young teenager was all the other adventures are happening sort of in the real world. You're an adventurer who comes across a situation, you have to help out. But in this one, Baron Sukumvit in the town of FANG, I like the fact it's called FANG, he's actually set up an adventure. It's artificial. So he's created this labyrinth in the middle of this town and he's filled it with all sorts of creatures and situations and traps to make a kind of sport out of it. And the whole town gathers round to watch this sport. This always bothered me. First of all, right, the way that the thing works, right, so all the adventurers line up to go into this labyrinth, and everyone's cheering them, and it's a big, everyone comes from all around, it's this big, it's like the Super Bowl of the fantasy world, or the FA Cup. And what bothered me is, what happens to the spectators once they've gone inside? Can they look into the labyrinth? Is there peepholes? Is there grandstands? Or do they just sit there sort of twiddling their thumbs, waiting for someone to come out after days in this labyrinth? How does it work? Also, how does Baron Sukumvit manage this labyrinth? Does he pay them a salary? All these orcs and trolls and goblins and scorpions and grubworms that are going to eat your head off. Does he give them a salary? Are they allowed to come out? Do they have a little contract saying you have to stay in there now forever? How does it work? It sort of felt a bit silly to me, right? Actually, it's good fun after all these years to go back and read the introduction. I don't know if you've read the background text. And it's interesting, there's funny little odd bits in this. What Ian Livingstone is doing here is building his world of Alancia. And FANG, I'm going to say it again because I enjoy saying it so much, is in the northern province of Chiang Mai. There's this weird kind of Chinese area in Alancia. It's also situated on the banks of the River Kok. Anyway, but what's also interesting about this, I don't know if you read this recently, but you go in to join the crew that are going to go onto this labyrinth, and you have a night in a hotel in a 4-poster bed. They have 4-poster beds in Alancia. And in the morning, you open the door into the corridor, a small man with slanted eyes greets you with a low bow. You couldn't get away with that anymore, Ian Livingstone. So there's kind of weird kind of Chinese atmosphere around it. The book is fairly straightforward. What Ian Livingstone is doing is he's really developing now. He's getting more confident in his gameplay so that he introduces a series of other characters like a barbarian and these other people who are going to go into the labyrinth. And you meet them or their bodies as you go through. You even team up with one of the barbarians for a while. This is something that Ian Livingstone introduces more and more, that you get friends and allies. And once again, he has that sort of figure-8 structure that I talked about in City of Thieves, where you can go on various paths and then you come back to somewhere that you're always going to come to, then you go off again and you always come back. When I first played this game, like the Blood Beast there on the front, that famous Blood Beast, is one of the major nodes that you can't get past. You've always got to face him. When I first played this book, I found it very, very difficult. This time round, I actually found it very easy to find the safe path. So you have to find these gems and put them in order. And there's all sorts of other gems that you can find, sort of red herrings that are sprinkled throughout the labyrinth. See, that's another thing that bothers me about Baron Sukumvit's Labyrinth. I'm sorry to keep coming back to this, but the whole conceit of the book doesn't work, right? So he's put these gems in the labyrinth, but they're found in completely random places. Like one is found in the borehole of this worm that comes at you out the wall. How did Baron Sukumvit know where that was going to be, or if you're ever going to be able to find it? It doesn't work. I'm sorry to bang on about this, but it doesn't work. Anyway, But overall, it's a very, very entertaining adventure with lots of good monsters, lots of good traps and everything. But the secret glory of this book, once again, is the artwork by Ian McCaig. Now, I spoke a lot about Ian McCaig last time in City of Thieves. His artwork here is even better, if that's possible. It goes into orbit. Here, we go away from the sort of busy world of Port Blacksand into this dark, lowering labyrinth. And his artwork almost reaches a kind of gothic pitch. Look at this image, a mirror demon from another dimension. This is nightmare fodder. Some of these images are genuinely terrifying. The passion in them, the darkness in them, they're extraordinary. And I think it's a big reason why this book was so successful. Also, take a look at this image of these leprechauns running away from you. There's something almost Lewis Carroll-esque. We're almost going into sort of Alice in Wonderland type fantasy here. You know, Ian McCaig really mixes up all the elements. And I think that's what makes this such a rich and atmospheric book. And I think it's a large part of its success. So I enjoyed revisiting it. Definitely, you know, it's among one of the better fighting fantasy books. I don't think it'll ever be my favourite, but I can certainly understand why it's many people's top pick. Okay, so that's Deathtrap Dungeon. Next time, Island of the Lizard King.